Hi everybody, and welcome to Media Foundations. I'm going to go through each chapter and pull out what I think are the most important parts of the chapter that you should know, and this will give you an idea of what we'll be talking about when we get together in class. So this is fun with chapter 1. One of the first things that you want to know is how the communication model works. Okay, so here's a basic drawing of the communication model. So for example, right now I am the sender of a message, right? The message is traveling through a medium, so I'm using PowerPoint, Screencast-O-Matic, Canvas, YouTube. I'm using lots of different media to get that message to you. So I'm encoding the message, it gets to you, you decode it, right? So my intent in this message might not be what you receive because we all decode messages differently, right? And you can provide feedback. You can pause the video, you can stop the video, you can maybe email me something about it. Okay, so you can provide feedback to my message. Another thing about the model that I want you to know is the noise. Do you see the noise on the bottom? Noise doesn't necessarily mean physical noise. Noise just represents anything that keeps you from getting the message. So it could be that you're really tired, or it could be that there's something else going on in the room that's distracting you. It could be that you're stressed out about something, you're hungry. It could be construction noise outside the building. There are a lot of different ways to define noise. And noise is something that keeps the accurate or intended message from getting through. So here's what I mean. Say, for example, that you are in a fight with your significant other. Your significant other sends you roses. Now, your significant other is the sender, okay? The message is not the roses. The roses are the medium for the message, okay? And the message is actually, I'm sorry. Now, you can decode that message however you want, right? So that the intended message might not be the same message that is received. So everything we talk about this semester is going to involve this communication model, because in many cases the messages that we receive we encode or we decode much differently than the intended message actually was. Does that make sense? Okay, so how are the mass media different? Because right now, even though I'm using some mass media tools, it's me, Julie Smith, giving you a message. And that's personal, right? If I see you in class and we have a discussion, that's personal communication, but mass media communication is different. Usually it uses something electronic and it reaches a much larger audience. Also, think about intent. So right now, my intent is to get you excited about Media Foundations, but the intent of Instagram, Facebook, NBC, ABC, CBS, MTV, People Magazine, Paramount Pictures, Netflix, Quibi, Hulu, their intent is not to give you information. Their intent is not to entertain you. Their intent is not to inform you or educate you. Their intent is to make money for their stockholders. And that's the #1 way that mass media is different from regular interpersonal communication, because there's an economic structure to it, right? They're not in public service. They exist to make money. All right. So why should we study the media at all? Well, it's global. It's interactive, meaning now think about feedback, right? When we were talking about feedback, for example, if I heard a song on the radio 30 years ago that I didn't like, I could turn off the TV or radio, or I could call the radio station and say I didn't like it. But now, on Pandora, if I hear a song that I don't like, what do? Ding! Immediate feedback. Okay? I can interact with the media now in a way that we couldn't 30 years ago. And it's also consumer produced. You know, the big traditional media aren't the only ones creating messages anymore. It's all of us. We're all creating media and uploading it for sharing. And I feel like the #1 reason that we should study it is that it's constant and pervasive. So what does that mean exactly? Well, it means that the average American spends almost 12 hours a day with the mass media. So I don't want you to think that this class is about media bashing, because it's not at all. I'm just merely saying that if we're spending this much time with the mass media, we should be talking about it more than we do. We should be analyzing it and asking questions, and many of us don't. In the average home, the TV's on for over 7 hours a day. Okay, well, I think that this number is probably going to go down. The TVs in our house are mainly used for gaming, not necessarily consuming. And some of the largest consumers of television are the older demographic, the senior citizens. And as they fade out, I'm not sure that television is necessarily replacing those viewers. But I can tell you that a lot of people have the TV on all day just for company, right? And I get that. In a survey, and this is an older survey, but in a survey, 4 to 6 year olds were asked which they preferred, TV or daddy, and over half of them chose TV. Some people get really freaked out when they see this statistic, and it makes perfect sense to me, because what does television ask of us? Nothing, right? All it wants is just our eyeballs. We don't have to interact with it. We can just sit there passively and consume. And so this makes sense, you know? Fathers might ask for chores or homework or interaction or something, right? Television requires nothing of us, which I think makes it interesting to study. Excessive TV viewing has been linked to obesity, decreased school achievement, poor body image, increased aggression, increased risk of substance abuse. You all know all of this, right? What I think is most interesting about this is the increased risk of substance abuse. And we'll talk about this when we get together, but what is it about television that could possibly lead to an increased risk of substance abuse? Well, I have a hunch, and I don't know if this is correct, but think about how sometimes it's just comforting to sit and consume. I think mainly we do that with like TikTok and Instagram now, but I know that if my dad, like when I was growing up, if he had a rough day at work, he would sit in front of the TV and just kind of veg out, right? Well, it's a mood-altering experience. It can be a mood-altering experience, and that's what substances do to us, right? So I can see the connection there, but the obesity, school achievement, poor body image, all of that, I mean, we know all that already. We know all that already. But when we talk about really how pervasive it is, and that just means that it's everywhere and it's very difficult to escape. I mean, think of all the places that you go where you are inundated with involuntary media consumption. Like if you go to Buffalo Wild Wings, my God, there's 15 TVs around you, right? You could go to the student center and you hear music playing. Like you are exposed to media in many cases that you didn't even choose. But in this case, this is, and it's from last year, but I think it's pretty interesting. Worldwide, we're spending 6 hours and almost 7 hours a day just with the internet. That doesn't mean other forms of media like magazines or books or television programs or movies or music. So here, the US is 6 hours and 31 minutes. And look at the Philippines, 10 hours a day. That's a lot. So when you hear that the media are pervasive, this is what we're talking about. It's just a part of the daily fabric of our lives, and we're not talking about it nearly enough. The average American kid will play 90 minutes a day. That's low. That is super low. I would say it's hours at my household. But here's the thing. I would prefer that my sons play video games than watch television. Here's why. When they're playing video games, they are solving puzzles. They are collaborating, planning. They are in charge of the narrative. They are moving around in a world that maybe even sometimes they have created. And when we're watching television, we are just consuming a story that was created by somebody else. And I like the fact that gaming is so interactive compared to the act of watching television. But the media also target you specifically to make money. And I want to show you how that works. Years ago, in the dark ages, there were 3 main channels. They were called the Big Three: ABC, NBC, and CBS. Okay, they tried to reach the largest audience possible. That's called broadcasting. Okay, they wanted the largest possible audience. Then a little network came along and went for something different. MTV didn't care how big their audience was. MTV just knew that they had teenagers right here. Okay, so they could go to Mountain Dew or Clearasil or whoever, or Monster, and say, you want teenagers? We got them right here. ABC, NBC, and CBS couldn't say that. They might have some teenagers, but teenagers didn't comprise their entire audience the way that MTV's did. So MTV was the first channel to narrowcast instead of broadcast. They weren't going for the largest audience, they were going for something specific. And if you think about the cable channels today, they're all narrowcasted. You've got the Golf Channel, you've got HGTV, you've got Outdoor Living, ESPN Classic, History Channel, 8 different versions of the History Channel. There's so many narrowcasted channels because they're reaching one specific audience. Now, let's look at what's going on today. Your Instagram ads are different than anyone else's in the world. When you go to your Amazon homepage, it is different than anyone else's in the world based on the information you have given them. That is called microcasting. And microcasting really is the future because of so much data that we give these companies about what we like and what we don't like. So Amazon knows that I have a dog and not a cat. Instagram knows that I love shoes and bags. And so I get lots of ads about that, okay? Think about your Netflix landing page. It's different than everyone else's because of the data you have given them. It's microcasting, and it's really, really genius use of all the data that we give these companies. So here's the million-dollar question. Actually, it's 2 questions. Do the media affect our culture, or does our culture affect the media? I can't answer this. That's what we're going to do in class. So get your answer ready. Well, what do I mean by culture anyway? Here's how your book defines it. Provides information that helps us make distinctions about what's right and wrong, what's appropriate and inappropriate, good and bad, and attractive and unattractive. So who provides our culture now? It's the internet. It's television. It's movies. It's books. It's magazines. The media mold our culture into an idea of what's appropriate and inappropriate. And just an example off the top of my head is some of the, and I realize I'm sounding like a really old lady here, but some of the language in pop songs now would never ever have been okay even 20 years ago. And so the culture has changed, right? So I want us to really focus on how the media define what is normal and what is considered abnormal, what's attractive and unattractive. So this will make for good discussions in class, I hope. So think about it. How does our culture define success? What does it mean to be successful in our world? What does it mean to be beautiful? What does it mean to be smart? Is wisdom valued in our media culture, or is glibness, smart alecky, valued more? How does our culture define politicians? Do they have to look a certain way? Do they need to be telegenic in order to come across well? How does our culture define alcohol, substance abuse? How does our culture define racial differences? How does our culture define wealth? Does it value the display of wealth, or does it value saving money? And that's a no-brainer, right? And one of the words that I really want you to come away with this chapter is the idea of convergence. So, you know, we used to have television, the internet, magazines, movies, music, all separated. Now they've all converged into this one device. And this is, I think, one of the most interesting things we're going to talk about this semester is the convergence of everything onto a portable device that we can take with us anywhere we go, and how we take that for granted. So these are the top ideas from chapter 1. I hope this gets you excited about what we're going to be doing next week and the rest of the semester. See ya. Oh, and as always, let me know if you have any questions or issues. Okay.